Hello and welcome to the Ship Shape Podcast, a series of podcasts where we meet amazing people and talk about their experiences, personal, technical, and all related to the maritime world. Come and dive in, dive in, dive in.
Today on the Ship Shape Podcast, we are speaking with Adam Allore, CEO of the marine navigation app Wavve Boating. We hear his story of being an entrepreneur in the marine space, the trials and victories of digitally changing the industry. Your two co-hosts today are Meryl Charette. I'm a live aboard on a Ta Shing Toshiba 36 in Boston, Massachusetts, and T.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Talha Bhatti. I am aboard my 40-foot powerboat in Virginia. And we have Adam on the show today. And welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me today. Happy to be here.
So, Adam, where are you recording this from?
I'm coming from Ontario, Canada, particularly Kingston. So anyone familiar with the water geography here, that's right where Lake Ontario feeds into the St. Lawrence River.
Well, I'm assuming it must be even colder than Boston.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, things are stereotypically Canadian right now. Snowy, cold, honestly, fairly unpleasant.
We did an interview with this guy, Cam Peeps, who has an electric boat company. They're also based in Canada. And I always found it interesting what the boating scene is like up in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about how do people use their boats up there?
Yeah, I mean, first off on the scene, it's close-knit. And I can say I actually had the pleasure of going on Cam's beta boat, electric boat. I guess this would have been 2 summers ago. So I've been, following closely with his company and Volteri. But in terms of the recreational boating space, I'd say it's quite thriving. I think, not offhand, but I think per capita, we've got one of the most amount of people who are actually actively boating. Lots of lakes, lots of good rivers for boating. So it really is a big part of the summer here and of the culture here.
And short season though, right? How long is boating season?
Yeah. You really want to try and maximize it. I'd say it kicks off, May long weekend, and then we'll go until about Labor Day weekend is the primary boating time. That being said, I like to try and keep my boat in as long as possible and push into November, December if I'm really lucky.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you've been boating for a while. Like, tell us how you got into boating.
Yeah, it's I grew up in a boating family. Fortunate in that regard. So my parents always had my sister and I out on the water. There's even some pictures of them, having a crib in the back of a small 14-foot group where I was kind of crawling around at the time. So you could kind of say I was sort of born on the water, spent a lot of time bouncing around the St. Lawrence River. And so, right from 12, 13 years of age, I started fixing up boats, learning how to fiberglass, just so I could get anything on the water that could float, and just fell in love with the freedom, the experience, and being out there. That transitioned to working at marinas as I got a bit older, and ever since I've just always been around the river, always been around the water, and love it.
Well, the story is certainly a little bit deeper than that. You went to college and got a mechanical engineering degree because you might have grown up boating, but it seems that academically you were starting to get into other things, and then you came back to boating. So what is it about the industry that you really kind of wanted to come back to?
Yeah, kind of story here then. So as I highlighted there, I did work at marinas to pay for my schooling degree. And one of the challenges that I was seeing at the marina, particularly where I was working, was it was a very treacherous body of water. And I would see boaters of various experience levels come in, and they were struggling to read nautical charts. And I would see the results of that. They'd come back to the marina, lower units ripped off, and hoping that we at the marina could fix it in, 24 hours, Have to give them the bad news. They're like, sorry, this is a much bigger job. So I was seeing this a lot. And then I was also, one of my roles at the marina, beyond, fueling boats and working on them, I would help people get familiar with docking. I would show them around on the waterway. And I was getting asked all the same questions all the time. Where's the beach? Where are the good spots to moor? Where can I go fishing with the kids? Same answers. And I was always kind of using traditional navigation tips like, line up that pine tree on that island and then see that white cabin over there, head due north, and then head west and you'll find this beach,
So this is
and
way
so
before
some people way before, everything that we've got today. So it was just very much word of mouth. As Meryl was highlighting, I then went to school and trained as a mechanical engineer. I worked in the industries I did work in the marine space doing some vessel builds. I worked in bulk material handling, so big conveyor systems that would go on big cargo ships, which is really fun. And then before starting Wavve, I also worked in the transportation industry, so metros, monorails, things related to that. And what happened was I ended up saving up some money, buying my own used boat again, and got back on the water. And I started using, the solutions that were available to me at the time to navigate the bodies of water. And I felt like the problems that I remember seeing when I worked at a marina, 6-7 years prior.
Yeah. They're like, no one fixed that? What?
Yeah. I was like,
it's been 20 years. Yeah.
So look, I think this could be better. So how this sort of progressed was one weekend, I wasn't looking to start a company or necessarily get into entrepreneurship per se, but I was always fascinated with maps. And I had this concept where I was just going to stay home all weekend long in our townhouse, and I was going to grab some mapping technologies I was familiar with. And I was going to build a chart that I would use as a boater. And I just thought, I'm going to throw out the norms that I know of how a nautical chart looks like and just reevaluate this problem kind of from first principles. And the main concept that kind of came from this thought that I had was like, what if I could just highlight clearly to me with my vessel, which has a 3-foot draft, the areas that I can't go. So show me the depths that are less than 3 feet. Show me the contours that are less than 3 feet in a clear red coloring, so that I can just clearly see it.
Yeah,
exactly. And then I was like, well, what about the buoys and the lateral markers and the shoal markers? Like, what if they just looked like I actually see them on the waterway? So my brain's not having to think
and
so
more
hard.
Visible, right? It's just they just hide them on the maps otherwise. And you're like, is that a buoy?
Exactly. Yeah, and then what I wanted to do is just take out, there's so much information in a traditional nautical chart. It's sort of a one size fits all, where you've got, recreational boaters are using it, commercial boaters are using it. The same people are running power lines between islands using the same sort of data set. So I'm like, I'm just going to rip out everything that I don't care about again as a boater. I'm going to build this map. So kind of that classical, stay up all night, work away on this map sort of story, and ended up making something that I was like, I would use this. I really like this. And then there was a local boat show in the area, and that's where things started to progress into the entrepreneurial side, where I was like, I want to see if this is a problem for anyone else. I think this is cool, but like, does anyone else think this is cool? Yeah. So I bought
and I think it's key that you say that though, right? Because like, it clearly was a problem enough for one person, right?
Yeah.
And you built it the standards that you would be willing to use, right? You're like, so far this solves my problem. And now let's go see if there are more people like me.
Exactly. And I think with a lot of company founding, that's really such a key step, is going from, okay, I solved my problem. I've fixed a problem for a market size of 1. Now I need to investigate, is this a bigger problem? And is there a market size that's larger than this? So that's where the timing worked out really well for me, where there was a local boat show. So what I did is I bought a booth and I made up a company at this time called Wavve, and went to the show. And with the help of my brother-in-law, who's got some more mobile experience or development experience than we took this map that I built and we just simply put it on a website. So you could just sort of pan around. And then what we did with this web page is we added it as a homepage onto some iPads. So it looks like it was an app, but it really was just a interactive map on a web page.
That's true. Right? It's baby steps. Nice.
Exactly. But it gave this sense that it was an application. I brought some iPads, put them on stands, created this logo, this company called Wavve. It was real from an outside's perspective. And I just took as much feedback as I could over the course of that weekend at this boat show, and it was quite incredible. There was a lot of people looking at this map, looking at this area.
Were you selling anything though, or were you just like promoting?
I ended up, thinking like, how do I take advantage of this opportunity, seeing this positive feedback? So what I did, anyone who was like, I love this, I was taking their emails. There was nothing being sold at this point in time. I was communicating that there's this app called Wavve, and there was these people coming up and they were trying to find us in the app store. And like, where's this application? I love this map. And then I'm like, well, we're just in beta. Give me your email and I'll let you know when it's ready. And that was how I established our first bet of customers. I was able to acquire a couple hundred emails over this course of weekend of this advocate group of people who were excited by this basic map. And that was sort of the inclination of like, okay, I'm on to something here. I think I'm going to pursue this further. I was still working as an engineer, but this was a bigger problem that needed to be solved and all near and pursuing this full time.
I just had a quick side note is that like these boat shows are famous for like 90% of the people not being boaters, the attendees. So the people who were signing up for this, like, were they boaters, do you know? Or were they just like, the random population be like, oh, that's a cool map?
There was definitely, it was primarily boaters who were sort of signing up. I agree. Nice. Definitely at the boat show, you get a lot of people coming by who just, want to look at the boats and kick the tires and that sort of thing. So there was certainly an element of that. But yeah, a lot of family boaters were taking interest in the application. So usually it would be, husband and wife, couple kids, they seem to like the solution. And that is also still to date is kind of where we've made our target market with the solution as well.
Okay, so you go to this boat show, there's a lot of interest. Then what? Because you're not coming from a technology background. How exactly do you start building this app in the first place?
Yeah, so what I was able to do was recognize, okay, the map part I can do. That was the, geographical information system tech. I could work out and I could build a solution for that. I needed help with taking that map and bringing it into a mobile environment. So that's when I was just reaching out within my network, reaching out within the province of Ontario to see who was available to come on and do some mobile development. And I found a guy who wanted to help me build the iOS application of this, where we would take this map and we would add further to it and do the first iOS release. So I found this guy, we got along well, we started working together, and we were able to release a very early, I wouldn't even call it like a beta product. It was like earlier than an alpha, pretty crappy, to be honest with you, solution out the door into the App Store later that summer. But it gave me something to then go back to all those people to the boat show to say, hey, like, what do you think? I know it's not pretty, but are we solving some problems here? And start taking that feedback. And that was really sort of the start of getting something out and starting this iterative, continuous feedback loop.
Did you have any investment at this point?
At this point, no. So I bootstrapped the company for the first 2 years of its inception.
And so the developer, how are you paying him?
Primarily from the salary that I had as working as an engineer. I had a little bit of luxury there that I'd worked in industry for, 6-7 years leading up to founding Wavve. So I had a bit of cash on hand. And there was a period of time where I was working the two. I was still working as an engineer, 9 to 5. I'd come home, work 6 to 12 on Wavve Boating, So it was an interesting, 8-9 month period of time where I was juggling those two roles.
And so you take this to the second boat show, and this time it clicks for people?
Yeah, I think there was further iteration on that. We went to the Newport International Boat Show, still with an iOS application, further iteration on this type of solution, and garnering more and more feedback. What I think was the start of a really big break for us was after the first summer, where I just had the iOS application out in the store. Bombardier Recreational Products, the makers of Sea-Doo, used the application, and they liked what they were seeing, and they reached out to see if we'd be interested in doing an integration onto a future model Sea-Doo.
But that's so crazy. They just reached out to you out of the blue. You didn't reach out to them or anything.
That's correct. Yeah.
No way.
I don't know all the details of how it came. I think I heard one of their engineers had used it one weekend and brought it up to their team when they were looking at available solutions. So really, that was sort of the start of a big break for us. They reached out, of course, do this integration. It's very
because
much.
Sea-Doo is big. Like, tell our listeners about Sea-Doo itself, like just in case they don't know what Sea-Doo is.
Like what what a Sea-Doo is. It's personal watercraft. So kind of a jet ski. I think they're the largest manufacturer, definitely in North America, and I think one of the largest in the world.
Yeah, and they make cool looking stuff. I think that's one of the reasons they're number one.
Yeah. And I think they're always sort of a forward-facing company, especially after working with them for the past 2 years. You know, they're always looking at what's next, and I think that's really helped them stay on top as a company. So
that's cool though. So then Sea-Doo, so they said we're going to put this on each of our jet skis, just like a local version, or was it like connected and everything?
Connected. So very much the technology that we worked on is kind of like CarPlay or Android Auto if you use that for your car, but for a Sea-Doo interface. So what's exciting about this is the Sea-Doo really just has to have, a fairly simplistic LCD screen, but all the computing and all the work is done by the rider's phone. Beauty of that is also the software that's on that rider's phone is always updating, as we're pushing updates, it gets to that person. So that experience can always get better and better and better.
Smart.
And you're not, locked into the fact that, there's this new software that comes out on this piece of technology on the jet ski that has to be somehow updated.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of remove that. You can update by the web. And I think it made a lot of sense for a company like Sea-Doo and BRP. They're great at manufacturing these products that delight customers on the water. They also have ski-doos or sleds for the snow. Great at that. And then they also are in the road with motorbike type solutions. But that's what they do, and that's what they're great at. And so partnering with them was great because we're focused on the software element and the navigation element. And there was a really great alignment there.
And did you already have the design aesthetic before Sea-Doo approached you, or like did they help figure it out? Or because it's a pretty looking app, like how do you make that happen?
Yeah, start with the map, and then with Sea-Doo, what we had to do, which was an interesting design challenge, was your phone, you can interact it with all the touch type gestures. Well, the way it works on a Sea-Doo is you're actually controlling it with like a 4-way joystick, kind of like your TV remote. So we had to rethink the application again and think about, okay, how do you control this with a 4-way controller versus having all the gesture types? So there was a lot of back and forth in that design process to make something that would work on a different screen that's integrated directly into the Sea-Doo vessel itself.
What about the original design though?
The original design?
Like who came up with that? Was that you?
No, I can't take credit for that. Really great designers on our team.
And this is also at this point though, by Sea-Doo point, you have investment now.
No, we still actually hadn't had any outside investment.
Okay.
So I was still bootstrapping, still getting this company off the ground and acquiring our early customers just purely self-funded. Now, the product that we sell, it does have a revenue element to it. It is subscription-based. So we were starting to get a little bit of early revenue, not enough to keep the lights on per se, but there was something there as well. So after securing this deal with PRP, we had to build something associated with that.
Must have been an oh shit moment, of excitement and like, oh man, how do we do this?
It was exciting. And then sometimes you'd want to puke, it was like the mix there was like, okay, yeah, this is incredible, but it's go time, right? And at this point, we didn't have an Android application either. But I knew that we were onto something. The fact that there was this big industry giant who was interested in what we're doing, was gaining this early traction. So it was then after that point, did reach out and did some investment with angels in the province of Ontario area and got the first bit of cash into the company.
And how was it received, just in general, when we talk about the marine industry and kind of the innovations and investments? It's really hard to get anything off the ground in the first place. And many apps and platforms that have come around in our space have died on the vine. So I'm just wondering how you portrayed yourself, because obviously these investors were like, marine, what?
Yeah, it's absolutely challenging. And you're right. I think the positives that I had going for me was getting something out the door really early. I was able to then ask for investment in a company that wasn't just an idea and a couple people. I had early customers who had used a beta product who were interested. We had a signed deal with a large marine manufacturer. So there's already this early traction that was just from blood, sweat, and tears and a bit of my own funding to get it to this point, that then I could sell a much better story of like, I'm going to make this happen. And that really helped. And then secondly, the angels in this area and, talking on the boating community within Canada, all of our angels are boaters. They're interested in what we're doing. And it's for them, it's, certainly they're interested in our financial success as a company, but I also have great personal relationships with them. We talk about boating. They love it. They like to be in that sort of space. So for them, it was more than just a traditional investment in that regard.
Well,
Very
one
cool.
thing that, obviously sets you apart, when we start talking about these social apps that are coming into the space, it seems that everyone and their mother is coming up with another socially based platform. But you went the route of focusing on navigational being the main thing that would drive people to the product. And then all the additional secondary things are just great add-ons. Can you talk about like the lessons learned and the progression of how the business started to kind of where it's at now?
Absolutely. And it's been bumps and bruises to get to that point. Despite starting this initial map concept, was like, I want to build a map that I can read. And that's a very navigation focused element. I thought we would go very community hardcore at the start. So very much like you're saying there, Meryl, where, okay, we're gonna build out this community and that's gonna be the first thing that we'll really start pushing. And, I walked down that road for a little bit. And what I learned was no one cares about your community if you can't get them from point A to point B safely on the water. That's the need that was bringing people into a boating app like ours. And so we had to deliver on that promise first. And then there's interest in this community that you're building and advancing that marine experience. So then I started shifting that focus of saying, we're going to tackle that challenge of how can we get, make that easier to get from point A to point B on the water. There's lots of things to improve there. Let's focus on that. Let's focus our innovation and technology on that. And then we'll start building out that community further on the other side of that. And, this is a process that we're still working through today. I feel like the navigation element, we've tackled a lot of it. We're now focusing more on some of those community aspects.
So, Adam, tell me about, like, especially based on what you just said, tell me more about, like, the competition that existed, back when you started it and before that. Like, before that was just the big wigs, right? You just had the Lowrances and Raytheon types, the displays built into boats. And then slowly you eventually, since I've been boating, I've been using Navionics, for example, or there was the Active Captain that I think is a little more recent. So but again, Active Captain was bought by somebody big again, Garmin or something, right? So like there's that progression. And then you are literally a brand new player coming in, upsetting the market. Like, how was that whole experience? And tell us more about that competitive landscape. Yeah.
Sure thing. And I think, stepping back to the first part of that, when I started the company, there was sort of like three buckets of navigation solutions that people had. It was either, nothing, which is a large portion of people out on the water.
Unfortunately, right.
Yeah, that's the majority. So lots of opportunity for improvement. And then there were the people with chart plotters. And I used to sell chart plotters when I worked at Marina. You'd buy the chip and it'd be $300 for the chip, and then you want to update it the next year. Well, that's another $300. And then
it was a monopoly then, really. Yeah, that's the only way to describe it, right?
Yeah, it was very hardware focused too. Yeah. And then there still are chart plotters and there's tons of value, but it is very.
But you literally get locked into a system back then, right? Like if you got this chart, you'd have to have that map and you have to have that loop, and right?
Exactly. Yeah. And they weren't really fun to use. I don't think anyone walked away from using a chart plotter and was
that was an awesome experience.
Felt any better.
Yeah.
And then certainly there was Navionics, and what I think Navionics did phenomenally was they got an app to market in the early days of the App Store, so 2008, where they said, why can't we take a chart plotter like solution and put it on a phone? right? And what a great value prop that is for a boater. Is
Game
instead of
changer.
spending
Yeah.
thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
I can have this on the phone. And it makes a ton of sense. And I still think that, Navionics is a good fit for a lot of boaters. And there's other competitors in the space, and I think those can be really good fits for other people. I welcome competition. I just think there's a massive market, and there's the type of person who wants a solution that is easier to use and has a community element to it. And that's where ultimately we fit in. And so, there's an element of us disrupting, but I also think that what we're trying to do here is, when you go to the grocery store and you're looking for laundry detergent, there's not just one solution on the shelf. There's multiple solutions. So that's, with how many people are out on the water, particularly in North America here, there should be more solutions. And that's what we're bringing to the table.
I downloaded your app and, I was taking a look at like the Boston Harbor chart. And I mean, frankly, I thought it was exceptionally well done. It was so easy to read. So I can see that through the experience of how do you make a usable platform using just a D-pad for a jet ski. It made the whole app just in general an easy to use thing. But I want to ask you, through this whole entrepreneurship journey, there's certainly been a ton of challenges developing and scaling. Can you tell a story of one of those extreme stories of trying to get this thing off the ground?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly been some technical challenges, like any company getting off the ground in the early days. One of the ways that I was trying to get exposure to Wavve in the early days when they didn't have a lot of money to spend on marketing was through press releases. I realized there was an opportunity to get some content out within journalists within the marine space, because I found a lot of the stuff that was getting written at the time was fairly dry. It was, Mercury Marine's outboards got 5 more horsepower, something like that. We've read that story before. So I thought, I'm going to approach journalists and see if they'd be excited to write about this new type of solution. And there was definitely an interest in there. And I forget exactly which was with boating industry or one of the other publications. They took it up and wrote an article, and it got really great exposure. We then got a lot of associated downloads and a lot of activity. At the back end at the time, this was the early days, we weren't quite ready for that. So there was definitely a big backlog. On that particular Saturday, I remember just being on my laptop, stressing out like nothing else, pulling my hair out as our server was down, trying to figure out how to get things back up. Got the team on the line, we're sorting it out. So I vividly remember that Saturday morning, just sitting and, sweating at my chair there. Lots of lessons learned from that. We would have, that issue was gone. No worries to anyone listening there, but that was
in hindsight, right? Good problems in hindsight. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I've been sort of learning beyond just the product itself, I think it's so incredibly important to continue to listen to the customers. And I think that if there's one thing that I think has been one of our strengths as a company, it has been listening to them and building a product for that type of solution. But one thing that I didn't really sort of foresee would be such a important piece of it is really the team that you work with. Even though, we're a fairly small team, but it really is important to have a good culture and a good group of people to work with. A startup is absolutely a slog, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but sometimes it's really boring, and it's about continuing to go through the boring, slogging stuff to keep the business moving and growing and going forward. And it's really hard if you're not working with good people. And so that became really apparent to me. We've, early days went through some various transitions within our team. I'm really proud of the group that we have now, which is just, I love to work with them every day. And that makes going through those challenges so much easier.
So Adam, tell us, for somebody who wants to start like a marine app, tell us more about dig a little deeper into this team building that you were saying. How organically, what did that look like? How big did it get? And then, like you said, some people that went away, what were the key things you found that you needed in the beginning? Was it, like you said, you needed the developer first, right? And then what came after that?
Yeah, so then we continued to fulfill our development stack. So we were iOS first, and then I needed a developer to come on for Android. So we were looking for an Android developer at the time. Then, as I was talking about that other horror story, clearly needed someone to help us on the back end side of things. And my strategy with our development has always been to do it in-house. So I'm always trying to find people onto our team and bring them on board, and instead of contracting it out. there's lots of challenges associated with that, but I always wanted to have a solution that we could iterate on really quickly. Mm-hmm. And I felt it would be very important that we have an internal team to be able to execute on that vision. So front end, back end developer. And then at that point, I was able to start thinking about, marketing, customer success, those other aspects of the business that are really important as we continue to scale. What I've found in sort of growing the team in terms of defining when you need that person, it's typically taking an approach of waiting until like you really felt that there was a hole in that position and then bringing that person in. I know there's other strategies where certain companies will grab a bunch of people and then figure out where they fit. I've kind of taken the approach of just seeing, once I start screaming, okay, I need someone here, that's when we bring them in. Mm. And then in terms of finding the right people, I think this is an ongoing challenge. I wish I had good answers or knew the ticket for this. My only takeaways that I can say with that is finding people that have cultural alignment with you, who are particularly passionate about the problem and are motivated by those types of things. Those elements first, and then I'm more interested in, what the technical background and the experience and those sort of skill sets. But I'm usually leading with is this someone that when things go wrong, how are they going to handle themselves? Are they going to be fun to work with? Are they excited by what we're doing? I put more value in that than maybe the years of experience or the school they went to and those types of things. And that's been my approach so far, and I think it's an ever-learning experience.
Is one of the questions, do you love the water?
It is. It's not a hard necessity, but I love, we do have more people on the team who do appreciate boating and being on the water.
Right? I would think, yeah, that makes sense.
How could you not, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
So, in terms of technology, when we especially bring it up in relationship to the marine industry, people are generally kind of Luddites in marine, and there's a lot of education that has to happen. And even though you come up with the most amazing platform or app, you still have to communicate that to the larger marine industry. So can you talk a little bit on communication and how to educate and get the message across to these people that are established players in the industry?
One was the press, right, that you said?
That was an element of it. And I think there's a greater thing here, which is totally true, particularly for the marine industry, is change is sometimes the hardest part. Just change itself. You can build something beautiful that fixes lots of problems, whatever it's software, hardware, what have you. But some people don't want to change, and that can be scary. And I think there's an element within the marine industry where it is maybe a bit slower, a bit more of a laggard than other spaces. So that's a constant headwind, I think. I do see, let's say, the winds shifting, I guess, pun intended here, within that. But that is certainly a challenge. One of the methods that I've looked to use to try and grow our company was recognizing, I'm not building this company out of Silicon Valley where, maybe we could have got millions and millions of dollars of initial seed funding and we could throw a lot of money at marketing and go that approach. I had to be a bit more strategic because that just wasn't, the opportunity available. And I wanted to grow this company where we are. So one of the ways that we've been sort of getting exposure and making people aware of this solution, and besides, the press release strategy, is working with various partners within the space and working with other innovative companies. So, Bombardier Recreational Products Integration was a big part of that. That was, my first sort of experience working with another marine industry partner and seeing the value in that. And it's expanded further from there. So we work with Freedom Boat Club. Our first partnership with them was with Freedom Boat Club out of Tampa Bay, where they were really interested in the solution that we were offering. And so, they have a similar demographic that is a Wavve customer, coming to the water. They're more focused on the experience, various boating experience levels. So there was a natural fit for us there. So we partner with them. We provide the application to their members. We've also partnered with the boat licensing company, so Boater Exam, Boat Smart, Boat Ed, all under the Calcami umbrella to provide offerings for them. So part of that growth strategy has been partnerships. And, the approach I like to take with those is really just seeing how can we help. And I think that's sort of an important takeaway that I think any entrepreneur should have in going into any discussion with someone else in the marine space is just starting with the mindset of like, how can you help? Don't think about yourself yet. Just how can you help these people? And then naturally, if there's an alignment there, it's going to help you and it's going to help your business. And so with that approach, been able to facilitate further partnerships and help grow the company and exposure through that.
Very cool. So you alluded to there's always a hesitance towards change, and you've been doing this for a while. What change do you see on the horizon?
I think in the marine industry as a whole, there's some changes that I'm really excited about. Certainly, more EVs in the space. I know we're talking about CAM's electric boat company. There's lots of other great solutions there. So that's pushing forward. I like to see that. I'm excited by some of the other alternative ways that people are able to get on the water now, whether it's boat sharing or boat renting or the peer-to-peer boat companies' growth. I'm excited by those changes in the space too, where not everyone has to own their own boat and the costs associated with that. Let's get more people on the water. Let's think of innovation that can support that. So that's been exciting to see. And then for us, as a company, some innovation coming down the pipeline. Like we've been working really hard on like this. Our routing algorithm, for example, will factor in the draft of your vessel.
AI.
Yeah, exactly. We just AI'd everything and away. Yeah. But it factors in the draft of your vessel and also the current water level conditions. So you can select a tide station. We'll update the map based on that tide station. And then wherever you want to route, we'll factor in everything and ultimately get you there. Mm-hmm. So that's the navigation piece. And then we've got, this community layer allowing boaters to share points of interest content on the application itself. And we've had large uptick with that. Now I think 40,000 plus points of interest shared on our map, all community generated. But I think there's going to be a really cool amalgamation of these two types of solutions for us, where now it's like, okay, great. I want to get from here as quickly and safely as possible, or maybe not as quickly. That's not true for boating, right? You got to enjoy the ride. It's not about getting it as fast as possible.
Some people it is, like we said, right? Some people just want to fly from A to B to C to D in one day. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to go wide open throttle by all means. Not mine style. I'm a slow
not mine either. Yeah. Not Meryl's at all. Meryl's a sailboater. Yeah. Meryl almost
even slower than. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I just want to get there by the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we will be able to take this of like where you want to go. We'll figure out that, and then we can start amalgamating. Well, did you know about this along the way, and allow the community to help that routing experience for everyone. So I'm excited by that sort of next step for us as a company.
As we come to our conclusion here, what type of tips would you give a budding entrepreneur in this space?
Yeah, I think getting unbiased feedback as quickly as you can and cost effectively as you can is really critical. And I think a lot of people, are very guarded of their ideas. I think it's best to just be communicative with them, get that early feedback. And also, you don't need to build the be all and end all of your vision. The reality is it's probably going to change so much and get flipped on its head and go a million different directions by the end of the day, that think about how can I really test the problem that I'm trying to solve? What can I build as fast, as quickly as possible? And get that in front of people who don't know you and actually don't even know that you're necessarily, this is your company. Like, make them think that, you're just a rep from them and you don't care whether or not they think it's good or bad. So unbiased feedback really as quickly as possible. And don't be afraid to go into spaces that you're not particularly familiar with. I had a bit of mapping technology experience prior to starting the company. I've got a lot more now. Now I've got people on the team who help support me with that. I don't really take on that role anymore, but just jump into new things. It's amazing what you can learn really quickly when you need to.
Yeah, that's the thing about entrepreneurship. You got to figure out how to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I know so much about taxes and like payroll and all that administrative stuff that I wish I didn't, frankly, but you kind of got it.
And then, so Adam, tell me, like, drill down on that a little more. Like, everybody's got an idea for an app nowadays. How does somebody know their idea is like worth pursuing?
Yeah, I think if you really want to get face to face with people, I think that at that stage, it's really important, and being really honest to yourself when you show whatever your type of solution that you're trying to construct. You want to get in front of people and you want to see, do their eyes light up? And this is where it becomes maybe a bit more of an art than a science in the early stages. And again, I'm got my limited lens of experience of this, but can you get people's eyes to light up with the concept that you're showing? And so do you really need to build out, wireframes and web app to be able to do that? Maybe not. Maybe it is just a brochure, or maybe it's just talking to a bunch of people. Can you see their eyes light up when you talk about the solution to their problem? And if you get that positive feeling, then there's something to pursue there.
Any words on locking in the niche?
In terms of like which niches to focus on?
Yeah. I'm making an app. This is the niche that I'm going to make this app for.
I think, at least I can talk on my own experience, I chose a niche which I'm passionate about. And I think that's been particularly critical for me. I mean, having industry experience and a background over that is extremely valuable. But I think it's the passion that's going to help you through those tough times, through long nights when you're having to juggle relationships and everything else kind of going on. My success has been focusing on a passionate area.
And collecting like-minded people who are as passionate about it.
Exactly. Go passionate and work with some awesome people, and I think you can do a lot.
Woo. Awesome, Adam. Well, it was great to have this conversation with you and hear about the journey that you had in technology and marine.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Keep disrupting the industry, and good luck.
Excellent.
Check back every Tuesday for our latest episode, and be sure to like, share and subscribe to shipshape.pro.